everyone, it's Annie, and today we have something different and special. I am welcoming to the podcast our program director, the executive coach extraordinaire, Heather McGonigal.
Thank you, Annie.
And she and I work closely together. As we work together, we also have a lot of conversations about leadership, about teamwork, about how people work together best to get results. And sometimes often our conversations are actually pretty darn interesting. And just the other day, we were talking about values in the workplace. And values are a hot topic, right? Like most people that are kind of into leadership or teamwork or whatever, anybody would tell you, you got to have really strong values within an organization to have a good culture, to work together really well, etc. And I don't exactly disagree. Okay. However, I want you to hear from both Heather and I how we do think of values, because we do think that they are pretty much terribly misunderstood in the workplace. We tend to think of them as something that everybody can do. Okay, so with that, I'm going to invite Heather to share with us kind of her experience of values in an organization.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. Yeah, I wanted to share in part, it came up this week in a class for our year-long training program for entrepreneurial leaders, and this topic of creating the culture where you have a company where everybody wants to work there, and you have this great reputation for that, that culture that everybody's after. And that's it was the frame up of the start of the class. And what we know, or what I was offering in the training, was what actually adds up to that positive culture that everybody wants. And that, I guess the way I would say it is that, and I heard that I used as in class the example of the value of integrity. And I heard that you recently talked about integrity on an episode of 10 Years in 10 Minutes. So it's funny that value is kind of first and foremost for both of us, even though we weren't in the same rooms having the same conversation. But it's a really good example because it's a common value that people in business or on entrepreneurial teams would think, oh yes, I want to be a professional person of integrity. And that there is a problem, like just having that value is not enough, I guess.
Yes.
And my whole class was the solution to that, right? And so I wanted to kind of talk to you about that, because to me, this value of integrity, it sounds so, yes, exactly. We want that. And then the problem is, as many people as there are on the team or on this call, there could be in different interpretations of what it means to demonstrate that value of integrity in how we work together every day. Totally. Yeah. So is there anything you would add to that?
Totally. Part of how I think of it is that anytime I've done interviews with people and talked about, a company's values, whether it was my company or a company that I was working within, that, I might say one of our highest values is integrity. Okay. No one in an interview ever said, oh, that's not my value. Like, I don't have that one. And, but, when you work with other people, there are times where I think all of us are thinking, well, that person seems pretty out of integrity. Like, they didn't keep their agreement, or, somebody's thinking that about me. And my interpretation of myself is always that, no way, I have tons of integrity. I might make mistakes here and there, but that does not go to my integrity. So what you were saying is we all see it differently. It's like, I probably am less, critical of somebody who doesn't keep an agreement than, say, my husband is, right? But I could be really critical of somebody who would gossip, who might share something that's kind of gossipy or critical or something. As like, that's out of integrity. So we all see it super differently.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with the complexities that we face, especially, I mean, life is complex. It seems like it just gets more and more complex and fast moving and all of that. And we know that that also therefore applies to how business operates, more fast moving changes, more complexity. But the more complexity that exists, the harder it is to dial in and say like, oh, you have to be 100% in integrity. And right now you're out of integrity because the factors that make up why I'm making certain decisions. If I'm on a team and I'm responsible for a big project, meeting a deadline, and it's super important, I have all these pressures, and there's complexities that are inside the company that I have some control over. And there are complexities inside the company that I have no control over. And then there's all of the things outside of the company, maybe other, companies that are participating or playing a part in a project that I have a part of. I have little control over that. And yet, so I can't be holding the whole thing. Like I just have to be in integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to do everything perfectly, exactly as I said I would, and that is going to fly out the window when something that you were waiting on to receive didn't come on time. Now what?
Yeah.
Now I can't meet my deadline if I don't have the thing that I needed that was supposed to come before. There's so many reasons and so many complexities that happen in business that thinking of it as integrity, or thinking of how people behave as a sign of their values is not that useful. Is not that useful. So we talk a lot about what is useful, and yeah. So Heather, tell us
So
about
for the class, the solution, or drum roll please, or whatever.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
solution is group agreements. We teach creating these team interaction standards. And these standards are meant to be like a definition of when we are achieving our goals and we're being that kind of team and doing the teamwork that's achieving those big goals, and we're servicing our clients in the way that we intend to, and we're helping with the transformation on the planet we're going for. Like when we're doing all of that, this is what it looks like, but we actually teach people how to articulate that. Like, what does it really look like in the day to day of passing things to one another on the team, and raising issues early and solving gaps, like different things that we can actually like define. And by that clear definition, now we're more aligned to like, this is what it means to be operating in integrity within this organization.
Totally. Yeah. Because if we don't define it, a classic one, because we use agreements so much. We love agreements at LET. That's how people work together to get results. But if you don't define what a value means, like integrity, like respect, like being service minded, if you don't actually define those, then when you get into sort of a complex situation, what it looks like when you're doing stuff, then I don't have any sense of, oh my gosh, if I'm working with a client and I know that I want to be of high service with them, but this call is running over, and that means that I'm going to be late for this next important call that I said I would be at. So now I'm going to miss that time. But it's like, do I have the integrity to show up on time? Or do I have the service mindedness of really completing well with a client so they get all the value? All of those are, if we put them in the values construct, there's no good decisions. It's like it just becomes too hard to actually, there's too many trade-offs. So instead, trade-offs of values, of like who we are. So instead, we want people to know, well, what should you do in that situation? What works? And so So for agreements, if I agree to be somewhere on time, that can't be a hard, fast rule if the situation changes.
Yeah.
That that's the kind of thing of where what integrity looks like here is that if something changes, you let people know, you renegotiate, you share, hey, I need to finish with a client, I'm going to be 15 minutes late, so that person can sort of
close that gap or something. Like I think of with that example, in like
yeah,
for instance, we could define on our team, what does
yeah,
Annie do when she's on a call and
yes,
then it turns into a higher stakes situation than she thought? And like, so how do we take care of that, right? So if we talk
yes,
about that based on what we know has happened in the past and all of that, and we try to make an agreement that'll help in that scenario, it might include details like you would pause for a second, you would pause with the
exactly,
client, you would
exactly,
message the team, and this is what you're going to message the team. And then your assistant is going to know what to do after that, right? Because there's an agreement in place with steps for that. And that allows us to be flexible. Like the agreement actually allows us to be flexible with the
totally,
situation that changes in that coaching call or that client call that you're on.
totally, yeah, yeah, because things change all the time. And the reason we make agreements is not because agreements are promises. We think of them much more as a process. But the reason we make agreements is so that we have a really solid sense of what each of us intend to do, right? Like what we're going for. Like we can't coordinate. We can't play a game if we don't have a strategy. And that way, this can be a lot like sports or a lot like performing arts in that, a game strategy, we all want to know what the strategy is so that we can do it. But if something changes, if somebody twists an ankle, if somebody, if the game goes in a way that like the strategy you can't even make the strategy work, it's like, well, then we gotta, come together and change it. So, yeah. So I very much think, and I think, here at LET, we notice so much that really having situational agreements, really knowing that your agreements, what you're going to do in situations, it can change as things change.
But also that you define it so that you have clarity, and then you also have this flexibility. So
Yes,
this idea of making an agreement but not needing to relate to the agreement like all or nothing, but
yes,
the agreement is the tool or the way. um, what I loved about this, Annie, what I became clear on even in just going through the process of teaching class this month in our leadership program around this,
yeah,
was I got excited because I recognized, oh, if a team comes together and they start defining their team standard agreements, how they demonstrate these values of integrity and other things, like what does it really mean and how we show up every day. This very practice of this is actually teaching them how to take a fuzzy idea
yeah,
and clarify it, so make it a clear outcome that they're aligning to, which
yeah,
I got excited about, because I think that's ultimately team members able to define clear goals together in business. Like that's how they win the game. That is the winning game strategy. So this is one way that you get to practice it, and then as a group you can see, like, have we really defined what this means here, to how
yeah,
we're valuing integrity? What does that mean here at Leading Edge Teams? How do we do that? And when we talk about that, we dial in the clarity. Now we have a stronger tool to use in all the parts of our business, which is defining clear goals.
yes,
So it's a happy byproduct, I guess I was
it
realizing,
is.
of the whole
It
process.
is. And the more we're clear about where we're going, right? The goals, like what we're really trying to achieve here, the more we're clear, the more we get on the same page. And then actually, the easier it is to make all those agreements, to really, we get better and better at like passing the ball. We think of, we kind of like the metaphor, the basketball metaphor here at LET, where we think of agreements as like a basketball pass. And the thing is if you're trying to win the game and you have a strategy, and that we all agree, like who's gonna pass to who, and in certain plays, and how it's gonna look, who's gonna run down the court, and what positions we're in. When we have that agreement, then we are way better at not only making it happen, but when something changes, we still know we're going for winning the game. Like, it makes it easier than with the change to think, okay, well, now what do we need to change to actually get that outcome? Like, it keeps us anchored. It's not like something changed and now we have no idea what to do differently.
I think another important part about this is that the clarity of the outcome and how you can get realigned to that. It takes it out of the realm of the personal. So we were talking a little bit about how values, like value-based discussions, or holding things just as values, it can feel so personal. So if you were to have a feedback, I'm on your team and you have to give me some feedback, and you say something to me like, Heather, you're out of integrity. And that's how you start the feedback conversation. There's almost no way for that not to feel personal.
Yes, for sure. As if you came into this business and wanted to hurt people or not get the right outcome or whatnot. It's
like I just wanted us to miss our goals. Like nobody's really doing that. Nobody's
doing that. So then when we say to somebody something like, you're being out of integrity or you're being disrespectful, I think that's kind of a common one that comes up, that people say or they feel often. And the truth is way different than that. The truth is really, how you behaved in that moment, I perceived as disrespectful. Okay, but there are a million things going on in a business situation. And the thing that I can keep remembering is that Heather didn't come here and work in this situation because she wanted to just please me or something. It's not about me. This is, Heather is working on the outcome. So something in how we played the game, we got triggered or didn't go exactly as we wanted it to go or whatnot. We might have something to clarify or to repair whatnot. Okay, but me, accusing her of being disrespectful is not even, it's not even in the realm of likely what's happening.
Yeah, Annie, if you're comfortable, we could use our book project as an example for a second. So, so Annie wrote this book, The People Part, and I was sort of, I guess, like, I would deem my role more like lead project manager or something, like helping hold the overall timeline, project perspective, while Annie, your part was more in the way in the words and in the weeds. And so our focuses at times were on different things.
Yes.
And at a very high level, like maybe I remember times feeling highly stressed about how we're going to meet certain deadlines and how it impacted the publisher or other parts that I was aware of, right? And so that would be amping up the anxiety or the stress on my side. And I'd be working really hard to use all of the tools that we teach to get myself in self-leadership, to communicate, paint the picture clearly to you of why I needed what I needed and all of that. And I think we did a really, the best that we could in that situation, actually using all of our toolbox. And at the same time, there would still be times where I could message you something and it would just land at probably the worst moment potentially.
Sure.
and I
Yes.
wouldn't know that, or, and like how it would land for you might feel like,
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe I want to
Well,
add to that.
totally. And you were holding the responsibility of the timeline, the deadlines, getting this thing over the finish line, right? I mean, and it was no small thing. Ton of coordination in there, a ton of helping just drive this whole thing forward. Okay. So I was holding the responsibility of getting the words that we wanted on the page, getting the content that I really wanted to communicate to our audience. Okay, so those two things are very different, very different. We have at the end of the day, we both want an extraordinary book, but our responsibilities in it are quite different and sort of competing with each other at times,
Yeah.
right? So when they're competing, the stress is up, and if anybody's ever written a book, man, it is stressful. It's hard. It's not easy. And so, so Heather might ping me like, hey, Annie, we talked about this. We're thinking that you were going to be done on Friday with this chapter, and how's it going? And I might have had a really hard week. I might have, I definitely remember times where I thought I could get a whole chapter done, and I'd get through half the chapter. I wouldn't even be feeling that great about it. I'm exhausted. And now I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then Heather might say, hey, like she might say, hey, so you got it ready? Because we really, they're really depending on us. They really need this, which is true. But in that moment, I can easily take it as, oh no, is she accusing me of, of not meeting my commitments?
Yeah.
Right?
Like I can see how even if I do that perfectly, it might just feel like, oh, Heather's telling me I'm messing up this big important thing.
Yes, because, I think it's really important here to note, because this is so common. And the thing is that when something like that lands on me, lands on someone in that way, chances are it really is like the straw that broke the camel's back. Because the problem is that I already was internally beating myself up for missing deadlines, right? For not being able to produce what I wanted to produce. So I'm already struggling internally with like, guy, am I just disrespectful here? Not, making this work for everybody who's working so hard on this. Like I'm already feeling that a little bit. So then all Heather has to do is, phrase it in a way that's just a little bit of a thing of like, hey, people are waiting for us, right? And then for me, I'm just like, oh shit, now I'm tipped over. Yeah. Now I'm tipped over into my own self-protection. And I can get defensive. What my defensive might sound like is, oh my gosh, I mean, this is way harder than anybody thought. I worked on it all week. I'm tired. I hurt my toe. Who knows? It's just like, there could be all these things that I get defensive with. And what's interesting is, because we talked about this before, Heather, it's like what I noticed through that process is that when I was not only kind of beating myself up internally, then I was obviously going to be a lot more sensitive, but even more so when I was tired, emotionally tired, physically tired, when I had been looking at pages for days and days and days, right? Didn't go exactly like I wanted it to go. Like I was not taking care of myself, right? I'm like, I got to meet this deadline. Let me do like another hour of trying to do this paragraph. And then an hour would go by and it would be the worst hour ever because I wouldn't even get the paragraph done. And so what I really needed in those times was to take care of myself, was the self-care piece. Because it's like, as I was running down, I was getting less and less resilient. I was getting less able to interact with people well. Like I was literally like running out of gas.
Yeah.
And, and then when something comes up, the smallest thing, it's like, I can't handle it. So you have a way of talking about that I really,
When I'm working with our clients, I like to talk about it as we work on building our emotional endurance. And we have a process that supports you in that. The core empowerment process helps you build your self-leadership, and you work on building it in the non-stressful times so that it can be there for you in the most stressful times, right? But aside from that, in addition to that, we're building this and we want to have this emotional endurance gas tank. That's the way I think about it. We want to keep the gas tank, keep getting it full. And we don't want to get down to an empty gas tank and think, no, I can just keep going. Now, I like to use this metaphor because nobody would think, no, I know my gas tank is saying like emergency E, and nobody would think, but I'm almost there. It's like an hour more. I'll get gas there. Like we might stretch it. I know I've known people and I've been in those moments where I've stretched it to the last possible second, but we wouldn't be thinking, no, but I should still be able to run my car on an empty tank of gas. But I feel like literally in entrepreneurial business, at least, is what I can speak to most from my job. But in entrepreneurial business, because we're always doing as much as we can with more limited resources, we are often in the place of going, no, Heather, I know my gas tank is empty, but right after this launch, I will get more gas in my gas tank. And one of the problems I ran into, and I think we complemented each other, Annie, in the book project, because sometimes you had more emotional endurance in your gas tank. And we were able, because I remember times that you said to me, hey, Heather, I know we have this deadline, but it's late. I'm tired. I cannot think about this anymore. And I'm going to go to bed and take care of myself. And I think you should do the same. And there were times I listened to you and there were times I absolutely could not hear you. Because I was in that mode of no. Once we turn this in, Annie, then I will take care of myself, right? Exactly. But the problem is a lot of these markers that we put for when we're going to fill up our self-endurance gas tank, it's a moving target. Right? The launch gets pushed out, or because of the results, now we're adding something else. And now you'll take a break after that. And that needle marker keeps moving all the while we're trying to drive a car on an empty gas tank. And what this means, what this looks like in teamwork is we have no emotional endurance left. And then we show up in ways we don't like. And we interact with others in ways that, we don't like it, and it sits with us, and it damages all of our hard work on our reputation and business relationships and all of these things. And I use this metaphor and I'm passionate about it because you need to have that emotional endurance gas tank, keep filling it up, because if it's on E, you literally will not be able to pause and take care of yourself when you most need to.
Right. It's like, if you want to keep going at that point with no gas, you know what? You have to be on a steep hill in neutral with and at that point you have no control. You have no control. You're gonna crash into something. I don't know what it's gonna be, but you will crash. So I find it just so interesting, so true. And it is something that we that we can all acknowledge intellectually, but somehow we actually do really need to develop ourselves that we don't push it over the edge. We don't run ourselves on empty, because it really does harm things. It doesn't make things better, it makes things worse. So it is really worth learning how to pause. Really, when you're going into a stretch, learning how to utilize, your boundaries for yourself of okay, you know what, I'll give this 30 more minutes, but that's it. Then I'm, getting dinner and I'm going for a walk. That you don't push it to a place of, this is not good for anybody.
I find, Annie, that this is the stressful thing about business today. and maybe entrepreneurial business in general, is that the times where people I coach with need to take care of themselves first and foremost, kind of like that moment I described where you were in a better place than me, recognizing, oh, I'm tired, I have to go take care of myself and go to bed, and you should too, Heather. And I couldn't even hear it. In coaching, I experienced the same thing repeatedly, where it's like the people that need the break the most are the ones that are most fervently like, that is literally not possible. Like, do you not understand, Coach Heather, that the whole world rests upon this one result, and it's all going to fall apart if I turn off my Slack messages at 7:00 tonight and if I'm not available, like literally the world's going to fall apart. And it's in exactly that moment that, like, no, you need the break, like right now. You need the emergency self-care, like right now. And luckily, you know, we coach with clients so that hopefully they have a relationship with their coach and they can hear that and they can get used to that. And you actually were my mentor all these years, and with the book project that I noticed, oh, look, Annie does know how to call an audible and be like, I have to take care of myself, right? I had to notice that. And and that is a muscle for people to build. And I think have somebody outside of yourself that in those moments where, no, you won't be able to hear it for yourself. Can you have a trusted person that if they literally say, hey, I'm closing down your computer, I'm taking you for a walk right now, that you go do it.
Yep. Totally. Yep. That is wise counsel. Yeah. Heather, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you it's nice to hang out with you.
Same. We'll definitely do it again. And I hope everybody here has, learned from Heather and I talking about values and agreements and keeping your gas tank full.
Yeah, and let us know if you have any questions or share with us some ways that you do know how to notice and pause and take care of yourself, because people can always learn from each other on that one. Like to say, if other people have good practices of self-care, like go ahead and notice the ones you like and go ahead and steal those. It's like it's one good circumstance where it's okay to steal from other people.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right. Thank you, Annie. Have a great rest of your day and evening. Talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye, you guys. To learn more about this episode's topic, pick up a copy of my book, The People Part, at your favorite book retailer or at anniehymanpratt.com.